Hi, this video is all about teaching over Zoom. If you're like me, you were told, hey, for at least part of this coming year, you'll be teaching over Zoom, either fully remote or hybrid. And so I've been doing research all summer and I've kind of curated a whole bunch of things into this presentation. I also did teach a class for 7 weeks. It met 2 to 3 hours each week, and I taught it fully over Zoom. So I do have some experience, and I put some of the findings and some of the things that I realized during that class in this presentation as well. So hopefully you find this helpful. This does have a lot of writing in it. I didn't really put it together so much as a presentation, but just as, I don't know, a place to put all these different techniques together. So you might want to hit the pause button during this video, just so that you can read the slides if you need to. So these are all the things that I am going to cover in this video today. The video is just kind of to be able to share all this research with other educators if they feel that they need it. So overall, my advice is just do what you usually do in your classroom. You know, we usually do icebreakers and debates and interview and small group and big group and all those kind of things. You're going to do all those things. You're just going to tweak them so that you can do them over Zoom. And we're going to talk about some of the ways you can do that in this video. I also made another video called Don't Freak Out, teaching remote and hybrid, that goes, it's a little more kind of simple and basic. And this presentation is a little bit more advanced, but search for that on YouTube if you want to start with something a little bit more kind of basic level. So, basic engagement over Zoom. It's really good always to share with our students the why. They're on their computers, they're at home, so they're surrounded by all their stuff. They have their video games, they have their phone in front of them. We can't even tell. It's very comfortable, it's very whatever. It's actually easier, I think, for them to become disengaged over Zoom. So if we tell them the why of why they're learning things, I think it makes it so they can focus better, and it increases engagement because it brings purpose to the class. So the first thing, even before you start teaching, it's good to have entry tickets. People use them in their classrooms sometimes, so it's great to use them here too. So you want to activate that prior knowledge. So, just put something up on a screen, like, a little slide up on your screen, share your screen in Zoom and say, hey, in the chat, answer this question, you know? So, 3 things you remember from our last class, talking about any homework or readings that they did, anything like that. But activate that prior knowledge before you start for the day. And that gives everybody something to do right when they get to class. Same thing with exit tickets at the end. You can check for comprehension. You can ask them if there's anything that puzzled them during the class period. That gives you data that helps you in planning your next lesson. So yes, and just pause if you need to read what's on the screen here. All right, so it's good to try and keep the students active and engaged by kind of waking them up. So if you just lecture to them, they're going to be really bored. They're going to zone out just like they would in a classroom. So there are ways to kind of wake them up. So you can use a variety of techniques. One is just in the participant window in Zoom. They have all these different options there. And so you can have them, you can ask them a question, thumbs up, thumbs down, just like you kind of would in a classroom, or dipsticking, 1 finger, 2 finger, 3 finger, whatever. And you can have them vote with the red and green buttons. So you've been talking about something for a while, they're starting to zone out, and then you say, okay, so if you believe X, then hit the green yes button. If you believe Y, then hit the no red button. And that gets them engaged, that gets them actually physically doing something and paying attention. And then everybody in Zoom can see everybody else's answers. So again, pause here, read. There's a whole bunch of different strategies. And it's good to use them every 3 to 10 minutes just to pull those students back in and have them actively doing something. So here's an example. We're going to do a lab about animal and plant cell walls. Do you think they're going to be the same or different from each other? Press green if you think they're the same. Press red if you think they're going to be different. And then, after that, that gives you some data as well for your teaching. And then you teach about cell walls. So there are things we do in our classroom like a carousel activity. Sometimes we put a piece of paper up in the different corners of the room, and students go around with their little marker and write. So one thing that you can do is have a carousel activity, but do it with Google Slides. Because Google Slides are editable by several people at once, you can just take the editing link for a Google slide that you've already kind of set up, different slides with different things written on them, different questions, put that into the chat. All of the students can click on it, and then they can go in and write their answers, and they can go from slide to slide, and all of them can write in their own answers. You could even ask them like, hey, can you use try to make your answer a different color than someone else's, or something like that, or sign your answer. So that gets them active and engaged as well. Another thing you can do with Google Slides is, put some kind of diagram up. So again, give them the link to edit in the chat, and then they could, type things in, or you might even have things over to the side that they drag over. That works really well if you have a diagram and you have some vocabulary and they drag it over to identify the parts of the diagram, those kinds of things, right? There's Padlet. Padlet is really great. Please watch some videos out there in the world. There's tons of them on YouTube about Padlet. It's just a really nice way where students can post information and various types of information. They can post links and photos and written, and then comment on other people's. They can vote for things. They can even post audio comments. It's just really nice. There's also other things out there like Flipgrid, and even a Google Jamboard. You can do a whole bunch of things. So, mostly in this presentation, I'm talking about just using Zoom and using Google products, Google Slides and Google Docs, just to try and keep it simple. But there are a lot of really great software and apps out there. Just, I wouldn't do too many at once, just do one or two per class period, or for a couple weeks, and then introduce a new one or something. It's easier for you, it's easier for the kids, but just find the ones that work for you. So like in a photo class, a Padlet's great because they can all post their photos and then people can comment and critique them. Or in an English class, you could set up a board with different options for motivation for a character, and then the students get the link to it, and then they vote on which motivation they think is correct, and then they post comment to back up their vote with some evidence from the text. Or say in biology class, you're talking about surface area in different parts of the body and different parts of the biological world, so that students see that there's some commonality and how important it is. So this is in shelf mode. So the teacher would write these things at the top, and then you could break up students into breakout rooms. And so room 3 would be talking about surface area in digestion. So they would have to do some research and talk to each other, and they can put text in there, they can draw things, they can post pictures, all kinds of things. And then the nice thing is you can save it as PDF. Kids can use it to study for an assessment, or you can use it as the basis of a discussion. You can make an anonymous Padlet as a question bank. So again, you just give them the link in the chat, and then they can go there and they can do it in Padlet. And then also Google Jamboard is really good for this because there's the sticky note function. So if they have questions along the way in class, they can just jump over to this and write some questions, and then you could leave, the last 5 or 10 minutes of class to go back and answer people's questions about things. Sometimes that works a little bit better depending on the size of the class, then interrupting the flow of instruction and activities during class is just saving all the questions to the end. But sometimes, of course, that's not a good thing to do. So, just use it at your discretion. You can also use the chat. So if people are writing things in the chat, the only problem is, and I've done some sessions with some other teachers and stuff, and what I've really found is it's really hard to like teach, pay attention to what people are saying, think about what you're going to be doing next, all those kind of things, and monitor the chat. So I would recommend either use the chat as a parking lot and then kind of go through again um, at the end and answer people's questions. Maybe have them put like 5 question marks to begin with. So as you're scrolling through, you can see that it's a question that they're asking, or have a monitor. So if you have a co-teacher or a TA, or even someone who's really good in the class or something, assign them as the chat monitor for the day. And they can go through and pay attention to the chat as well. And if anything's really important that you should be answering right now, they can bring it to your attention. So yeah, they can be the voice of the chat. All right. So discussion strategies. It's a lot like in a class, right? There's some things that are the same, but there's some things that are different. So if you break up students, say into uh, breakout rooms, then it's hard because you can't be every place at once. In a classroom, you can kind of overhear the people in the different corners talking. When they're in breakout rooms, you can't. But what you can do is have a common Google Doc. So if they break out into groups, right, of 2 to 4, I actually kind of prefer 2 to 3, and gets them more involved. Give them all the link in the chat to a common Google document or slide thing. And so give them each a question. And you can actually, no matter what room you're in, as long as you have the document open as well, you can see what's going on. And if one group isn't, filling out theirs at all, that's the group that you need to pop into and check in with them. So it kind of gives you it shows you what's going on in all the rooms, even if you're not in them. And I got this from this amazing video that I reference later, that's all about like hybrid and Hyflex. So that'll be coming up and I'll tell you, but it's a genius idea of being able to see what's going on in the breakout rooms without being in every single breakout room at once. So I think Mike Caulfield is anyway, we'll get to it. For large group discussions, just like in classroom, you can have them raise their hand to speak. Sometimes over Zoom, like no one knows whether they should say something and it's a little weird to interrupt people and stuff like that. So you could do that. If you are in the full like gallery mode, if you're not sharing your screen and you can see everybody, just have them physically raise their hands. I think that's a little bit easier. You can have them write their name in the chat and then you can call on them in that order. But you can also do cold calling with a warning. So you can have them say, hey, we're going to talk about this question. I reserve the right to call on any of you. So you might want to think to paper and write down your thoughts. I'll give you a couple minutes first, and then we're going to have a discussion. Or, when you're talking, just like in class, say, hey, Sally and Joaquin, I'm going to call on you guys first. So the thing that we're going to talk about is this, and give them a couple seconds to think about. And then you'll start with Sally and Joaquin, and then you can open it up and see who else wants to comment on it. Yeah. Another thing that you can do is send out a poll. So in Zoom, you actually have to set it up on the Zoom website, not when you're in Zoom, or a Google form. Google Forms are nice because then you can have them log in with their email and then you know who said what and everything. But you can set up a poll to stimulate discussion. So, you could poll your US history students. Does the Constitution support mandatory wearing of masks, or does it support the right not to wear masks? And the split that you get, is going to inform the discussion moving forward. And there's this great book by Dan Levy, Levy, called Teaching Effectively with Zoom. And it's got this table that kind of talks about like if if it's very split, if they're similar to each other, these are some of the things that you can do next in your discussion. So this is an amazing book. I highly recommend it. So we've talked about breakout rooms a little bit, but the advice that I have learned, and I think it's really good, is they are most effective when students are given a clear task. So there's this weird thing that if you're on a PC or a Mac and you're in a breakout room, you can see the chat from the main room. If you're on a Chromebook or a phone, you can't. Your like chat is suddenly blank. So you need to give them instructions kind of ahead of time or in a way that they can go back and look at it. Even if they're not in the main room, you can even put it on the screen, excuse me, and have them take a picture of it with their phone or have them write it down. Or you can use this broadcast message. It's very short, but to kind of tell them, or give them a link to a document that has the instructions on it. But give them a clear task. Don't just put them in there with something vague. They won't know what to do and they'll go off topic. But if they have a clear task and they know that they have to kind of report back or produce something, that will keep them on task. So we kind of mentioned it before, but you could use like Google Slides in a breakout room. So give them each a problem to solve and they work with each other. And again, you can see what each group is doing if they're writing their answers in there. Yeah. And if you use pre-assigned rooms, you can even group people together by ability for differentiation or whatever other reason. And then beyond basic discussions, there's things like Jigsaw, where you get them in one group where they start with something and then you come back to the main room and talk about it. And then you put them back in a second group where they've mixed it up. So that is the Jigsaw. You can pause and read about that. And or give them something like teach a class about haikus, give them 5 minutes to work on their own Google Doc, break them into groups where they share their screens with each other, and then everybody comes back to the main room where each group presents one of their haikus. So again, this is keeping them really engaged. They have things to do kind of every minute of the class. This is just my school uses Aspen. So these are the directions of, it's really great. You can download all your students from Aspen into a CSV and then upload it into something or other. I don't know. I actually haven't done this, but you can do it and it helps you pre-assign your breakout rooms in Zoom. So again, just pause, read the directions if this is something that you're interested in. So hybrid and Hyflex. So hybrid would be you're teaching the students that are in the room with you and you're teaching students at home. And Mike Caulfield did this great video. I think I have it on the next slide or two. I highly recommend watching it. And he talks about, instead of, one would think, oh, I have to teach the kids in the class and then somehow bring in the kids that are at home. No. He says that you should teach the kids that are at home, the remote kids, over Zoom, and then loop in the kids in the room. So maybe all the kids in the room are on a computer as well, right? And then a Hyflex classroom is when you have your face-to-face kids, your Zoom students, and then you maybe record it or you make asynchronous videos to loop in students that are not participating synchronously, but are participating later on their own. And so this is what I was talking about. You got to flip the paradigm. So have the kids in the class, the students in the class on their computers, and then you're teaching, but then you are also teaching the students at home. So teach Zoom style, like we're talking about in this video, and then loop in the kids that are actually physically in the room with you. You might have to do some things with mics, like have them all be on mute if they're in the room, because you'll all be on Zoom at once, and feedback and stuff. I haven't tried this out yet, but you might want to do some practice sessions with other students or professors first, to try and figure this out. So equivalency. So one of the most important things with Hyflex students is they might not be doing exactly what you did with your face-to-face or remote synchronous students, but they need to do something that is equivalent, right? So if you're having a critique or discussion, they need to, with your remote and face-to-face students, they need to do something later that adds to that discussion. So you can have them watch the Zoom recording, or do some research and write something up, or whatever it may be. If you've produced a Padlet, maybe they look at the Padlet and they have to add to the Padlet, or whatever. So having students do different things to fulfill the same learning objective is actually what educators have been doing for years with backwards design and differentiation. So don't be freaked out by that. It's something you already know. So this is the Mike Caulfield video. It's absolutely amazing. How I would approach fall semester personal Zoom Flex based view. Please go watch it. It's amazing. So in class, we often present an idea and or teach a skill and then give students time to do it. They're kind of quietly working in class, right? Over Zoom, these periods of silence seem very awkward, but you need to embrace them, right? So, just say, here, we've just learned this thing. Now everybody get out a piece of paper and try this mathematical problem, or draw this picture, or do, whatever it is that they're going to do. Or, you taught them how to do something in Photoshop, and then they spend 5 to 10 minutes working on it. Now, even if this is not, enough time to finish a project, this is enough time to get started, and you're there and you say, hey, if anybody has any questions, just let me know. And they're all kind of leaning in or writing and working on something, and one of them may say, oh, I'm having a hard time with this, can you help me? And then you help them, just like it's in class. All the other students probably, if they're working on something on the computer, will have their Zoom not visible anyway, because they'll be in some other program. If they're working on paper, it doesn't even really matter, because think about it. When you're in a classroom, you go over and you help students with things. It's not a big deal. And the other kids over here. So it's the same thing here. So don't be afraid of those periods of silence. And it's a lot better than just teaching them something and then sending them off on their own, and you're not around, and then they have problems and they don't know what to do. So have them try something out first while you're there to help them. Even if you're just kind of sitting there, waiting for 5 minutes and no one's asking for help, just be there. So here's some examples. So if you explain the Pythagorean theorem and, give them a set of problems and give them 5 minutes to do it, and it's going to be weird and silent, but, you're there, and if anybody needs help, you help them. Or, introduce the concept of the hero's journey, and maybe even give them time to read in class. Yes, we can be quiet and read over Zoom to ourselves. So maybe you take 20 minutes, they read the article, or the short story, and they identify the different stages, and it's okay to be quiet and have that work time, and then you go into like a class discussion and stuff afterwards. You want to have peaks and valleys. You can't do the same thing over and over again. You can't lecture the whole time. You need to have up and down. You can't actually have them engaged necessarily the whole time, because you need a little bit of downtime. So you want to go kind of up and down in your teaching. So you want to come up with like an agenda and rotate your activities. So maybe you have a mini lecture, and then they have time where they practice conjugating. So this would be like a regular verb. So they practice, and then they get into small groups, and then they do a listening activity. And, you try to vary them. And again, that will be those ups and downs that will keep them pulled into the class and engaged. So yes, with agendas are good because they reduce anxiety in your students. They help you plan. You can see, oh, I have a variety of activities. I have those peaks and valleys. It keeps you on track. It keeps them on track. It helps you justify the why of why you're doing things in the class. All those things. It's just very good to have an agenda. So here's another example of an agenda. Have present and absent breaks. So a present break, just throw a slide saying, hey, we're going to have a present break. And I like to put a little picture up on the screen of some like desk stretches or whatever. Just, take a minute, have the students breathe together or something. Again, that kind of wakes them up and primes them to be better to learn for the rest of the lesson. So, midway through the lesson, have a little present break. Or if the lesson is a little longer, if your class is over 45 minutes or 55, 65, 75 minutes, something like that, you might want to give them an absent break. So, because like in school, people go to the bathroom at different times because you have to, because they can't be wandering the halls, or the facilities won't handle everybody going to the bathroom at once. But when they're at home, you can maybe have a break where they've been drinking their tea and their dunks and their coffee and whatever they've been doing, and you might need to use a restroom, and fortunately you can let everybody go at once. So my recommendation is a couple things. One, have them turn off their mute themselves, have them turn off their video. You can do that as well because you need a break as well. Put a timer up on the screen. So if you go to Google and you just put in the word timer, a really nice timer comes up. And press start, and then share your screen, and you can even enlarge it and make it nice and big. And then the students know, oh, I have 5 minutes left. I have 3 minutes and 30 seconds. I have 2 minutes and 13 seconds. And they can kind of pop in to the room where there is their computer and they see how much time there is. It's a lot better than just telling students, hey, come back in 5 minutes, because that's very vague. You're not going to be able to start because half the kids are going to be gone and you won't even necessarily know if they're there or not or whatever. So just sharing your screen and putting the timer on the screen is a very helpful thing. You can even give them a task to do. You can say like, okay, after this break, we're going to go do this. I want everybody to go around your house and collect these 3 materials or something, because we're going to use them in the second half of the class. So yeah. I you can build rapport and community. It actually, at least I found when I was teaching over Zoom earlier this summer, it happens pretty quickly if you talk to them, and you need to be genuinely interested in them, just like we would in their classes. I mean, yes, there's all the icebreaker things, but also just chatting. Get to class 5 minutes early, and just as people come in, start talking to them like, oh, hey, Sally, welcome to class, how was your summer, blah, blah, blah. What have you been binging on Netflix? Those kind of things. It's good to mirror your students. So whatever they say, repeat the last couple words, and then build off of that and talk to them. People feel very listened to when you do that. Use students' names a lot. Smile. Even if you're wearing a mask, or if you're wearing a mask, just they can't see you smile as much, so make sure you articulate your specific compliments. Um, and Flipgrid and Padlet and all those kind of things are great for little visual bios of themselves, for icebreaker activities. It's kind of hard sometimes over Zoom to read body language, or if it's written, if it's in the chat and stuff. So just assume positivity. It might at first seem like a negative thing or that it's conflict, but just assume positivity and it'll be much smoother. And then all the other strategies like agendas and warning before cold calling with think to paper, and all those kind of things will help lessen the overall anxiety. In terms of classroom management, I recommend to mute all your participants. You can use your chat to take attendance, use those nonverbal buttons, turn on gallery view often when you're not sharing your screen, change the chat settings so that they can only talk to the class or privately to you and not privately to each other, because they can really distract themselves with that. This is a really nice video here by Teaching Smart with Faye, where she talks about Zoom class. That's especially good for younger kids. And then those are all things that you can do while you're teaching. But just to get ready to teach, here's some advice. In terms of setting up, again, you might want to pause and look at these, but talk to your administration and IT. Is your school recording? Is your school not recording? But you do want to do things like turn on file transfer and meeting reactions and polls and stuff like that. So again, certain things like polls can be done if you're on a PC or a Mac, but cannot be done if you're on a Chromebook. So try to set everything up on a real computer. As much as I love my Chromebook, there are certain things I know that I can't do. Annotation, those kind of things. You want to have breakout rooms, all that kind of stuff. They say that it's nice to have virtual backgrounds because it reduces anxiety about home situations. So kids can pick those. Just some examples of some Zoom settings. That you'll have to do on the Zoom website. You can schedule Zoom meetings directly from Google Classroom. You can pause and look at these directions. It needs an extension to do it. And then your visual and audio. So you could be like a great teacher, but if no one can see you and no one can hear you, it's not going to be very helpful. So first of all, lighting. Do not have a light source behind you. I see it all the time. You get this dark face because there's a bright window behind you. But so what you need is to turn around in the room and have the window putting the light on your face. Or if there is a bright source behind you, make sure that you have a light. Put a lamp behind your computer so the light falls on your face. Or I got one of these off of Amazon. It was like $20 or something, and it's really great. So people need to be able to see your face. We read each other's micro expressions all the time. And so it's very helpful. Also, the angle. Like, we don't want to see your chin. We don't walk around looking at the bottom of people's chins all the time. Try to lift up your computer, whether you have a stand or you just put it on a bunch of books. You might need to use another, like here you can see like a kind of external, like a Bluetooth or a plug-in um, uh, keyboard, or you might need to use an extra. If you have two monitors or dual monitors, you might need to have an extra webcam or something like that. But anyway, that's might help you out when you're zooming. Audio, you want to avoid audio hazards, like actually just happened right now where my neighbor is having their lawn serviced and it's suddenly very loud outside right now. So avoid audio hazards. So things like fans and washing machines and fridges and ACs and stuff like that. You want to silence your phone, close your windows, just so there's not too much noise around you. Also, you want to improve the sound of your own voice. Right now, I'm using a very cheap, I think it was like $12 microphone to record this. Just very simple, plugs into the computer. You can get USB ones. Use headphones if there's a lot of noise around you as well that have a microphone on them. I've been seeing people use the over the ear ones with the little microphone that comes down lately, and it's always much easier to hear them. And then your workspace. So creating a home office, like having a dedicated space will really help you in your teaching. The New York Times had a really cool article recently about building one in like a closet. Or there's these cool pieces of furniture where things fold down so it's not there all the time. Even something simple like this where you can use your laptop if you don't have space for your own dedicated office, or like a bookshelf like this with a larger area for a laptop, or a little piece of secretary furniture. And then it's really nice, especially if these things fold back up. So if you can put a screen in front of the space or some curtains that go and hide your computers, because if you're working from home, you also want to be able to relax from home. So you need to be able to turn it off. There's time for work and there's time that work is over. Comfortable seating, especially if you're working from home, if you're at a school, or a college, university, they have people that buy specific furniture that's supposed to be a little bit more comfortable. You may not have that at home. You might want to spend a little bit of time doing some research and actually investing in a better chair, because you're going to be sitting a lot while you're teaching, or other little desks or something that you can pull up to a comfortable chair. You might be working at home with children. There's probably lots of information out there, YouTube videos, articles, those kind of things. Talk to your friends with kids. What are some of the things that work? You might want to pause and look at some of these. But if you're at home working and your kids are at home, there's definitely strategies that you can use to make that work better. So the last thing is just some essential skills that the students might need. You might want to survey them at the beginning, and then you'll have to teach or reteach, things like, do they know how to do a screenshot on their computer? Can they upload a file from their phone or computer to whatever website you need them to do that for? Can they make a PDF? Do they know how to share a screen in Zoom? Do they know the difference between the main room group chat in Zoom and being able to send you a message privately? Have they used Padlet or Edpuzzle or edit a PDF using Cami or a Flipgrid or whatever? So whatever software you're going to end up using, ask your students first, you know how to use this, and if you don't, then you'll need to give them a tutorial or at least share some videos with them or something. Um, but yeah, and so all of these techniques will hopefully give you kind of soup to nuts. This is what you can do in your class. This is what you can do over Zoom. Again, there's many more things you can do as well. Also, how can you set up your Zoom and set up your life to better be able to educate over Zoom? If you have any questions, just contact me and I'll try to help out.